Hello. On a damp and very grey morning, we've come to Slough to talk about money. And I'm standing in the middle of the Slough trading estate, which for nearly 100 years has generated a large part of the wealth of the southeast of England. And this place has been built entirely on private enterprise and private effort. Companies, entrepreneurs, workers have flocked to Slough from around the world, the latest wave coming from Eastern Europe. And they've come here attracted by one thing, the opportunity to make money. So it's hardly surprising that Slough takes money very seriously indeed. Now, unfortunately for the people of Slough, they, along with the rest of us in the country, are forced to hand over around 40% of our hard-earned incomes to the government. And the way the government treats that money is on a whole different level. To show you what I mean, we're going to take a little walking tour around Slough, and we're going to be looking at how some of the government departments that are represented here actually account for all the money passing through their hands. And as we're doing so, bear in mind that private sector companies under Britain's company law are obliged to issue accurate and timely accounts showing exactly where all the money has gone. And if they don't do so, then at the end of the day, company directors could find themselves in jail. Now, Slough is and always has been a town with a high immigrant population. So we're going to start off here at the Immigration and Nationality Directorate, local branch. It's somewhere in that building behind me, but I'm not sure where because there's no proper nameplate on the door. The IND, of course, is part of John Reed's hugely dysfunctional and not fit for purpose Home Office. And if you thought they were rubbish at counting the numbers of immigrants into this country, you want to have a look at their financial accounts. Now, the Home Office spends £13 billion of our money every single year. And for that kind of outlay, we have a right to expect that they will account for it properly. But last year, they somehow lost £3 million. Can't find it anywhere. Their initial response, of course, was to draw a veil over the whole thing. But the sticklers at the National Audit Office said that that wasn't a runner, and somehow they were going to have to find it. Well, now, 2 years later practically, they are still trying to find it. We later discovered that their financial accounts for every single year since 1998, bar one, have been qualified because they haven't added up. It is absolutely disgraceful. Standing now outside a job centre. Actually, these days they call them Job Centre Plus. It's part of the Department of Work and Pensions, which is Britain's biggest spending government department. Every year it spends £125 billion of our money and employs 120,000 civil servants. Now, on its own admission, it loses £3 billion a year to fraud and error. So it's no surprise that its accounts have just been qualified for the 17th year in succession. We've come along now to the local branch of HM Revenue and Customs. And you'd have to think, wouldn't you, that if anyone was going to get the figures right, it would be the tax collectors. No such luck, I'm afraid. When last cited, which was 2003-04, their accounts revealed a gaping hole of £1.17 billion. And their accounts too have been qualified by the National Audit Office. The chairman of the Public Accounts Committee called it shameful and a national disgrace. But all that's actually happened is that the head of HMRC has been relieved of his responsibilities and moved next door to an advisory post at the Treasury. Now, whatever our politicians may tell us about prudence and efficiency and even those famous golden rules, the reality is that government has never taken the stewardship of money half as seriously as private companies have to. Take the issue of finance directors. In a public limited company, the finance director will be a senior board member, and he'll be a qualified accountant and will have had years of experience of staying on top of the numbers. But in a government department, until very recently, there has just been no equivalent role. And the numbers have very often been put together by quite junior staff miles away from the top people in the department, which is exactly what happened in the case of the Home Office accounting shambles. 3 junior employees in Liverpool put the figures together while their bosses were sitting hundreds of miles away down in Whitehall. Now, to finish our tour around the government black spots of Slough, I'd have liked to have taken you to the local office of the granddaddy of them all, the European Commission, the most notorious centre for non-accountability in the use of public money. Their accounts have just been qualified for the 12th year in succession and are riddled through with fraud and error. But of course I can't take you to the Slough local office of the European Commission because those Euro bureaucrats don't like to stray too far from their glass palaces in Brussels and such like. They certainly wouldn't dream of setting foot in a place as grubby as Slough. So instead, we're going to take a look at one of Slough's newest attractions, which, just like the town itself, is a triumph of private enterprise. We're going to end our trip to Slough here. It's the car park of the biggest Tesco store in the world. I had hoped to be outside, but it's now absolutely tipping down with rain out there, so we're going to stay in the car park. Now, at the end of our tour around Slough, there are 3 points to make about Tesco. First of all, it is by far and away Britain's most successful retailer. Second, it only ever gets any money from its customers. Unless it serves its customers, it gets no money at all. How very different to our government, which can just help itself to our wallets. And the third point is that Tesco files its annual accounts less than 2 months after its year end. Exactly the same standard that is met by every other major company in Britain. How very, very different to the abysmal performance of these government departments. Last summer, the Public Accounts Committee hauled the Home Office mandarins in front of them to demand that they account for the financial shambles in their department. The chairman of the PAC put it to the permanent secretary of the Home Office that were such a shambles to appear in the accounts of a private sector company, people could go to jail. Sir David Normington's response? Yes, but all sorts of things happen in the private sector. Yes, Sir David, they do. Fantastic successes like Tesco, Britain's leading grocer, happen in the private sector. But there is no chance whatsoever they would ever happen in the public.